Ladies and gentlemen, obedience unlocks favor. God is a God of order and design, and nothing in his kingdom happens without preparation. Before he elevates someone to a new level or entrusts them with a greater responsibility, he first prepares them. This preparation period is not always easy, and it often comes with challenges, but it is necessary for growth. Just as a seed must be buried in the ground, endure the dark soil, and push through the dirt before it can sprout into a fruitful plant, so must we endure seasons of preparation before we are ready to receive the promotion God has planned for us. This process is evident throughout Scripture. Look at Joseph, who was given dreams of greatness but had to endure betrayal, slavery, and imprisonment before stepping into his role as a leader in Egypt. God used those experiences to develop Joseph's character, teach him wisdom, and prepare him to handle the responsibility of saving nations during a famine. Without that preparation, Joseph might not have been equipped to fulfill the destiny God had for him. Preparation often involves learning discipline, developing patience, and strengthening your faith. It's during these times that God molds and shapes you into the person who can carry the weight of the blessings he wants to give you. Think of David, who was anointed as king but spent years tending sheep and fighting battles before ascending to the throne. God used those years to teach David how to lead, how to trust him, and how to depend on his guidance. In our own lives, preparation may look like closed doors, delays, or detours. It may feel frustrating when things don't happen as quickly as we want, but we must trust that God's timing is perfect. He is not withholding blessings from us. He is ensuring that we are ready to handle them. A blessing given too soon can become a burden. That is why God, in his wisdom, takes us through seasons of preparation. He knows what we need to learn, what we need to let go of, and what we need to become before we can step into the next phase of our purpose. This process requires trust and obedience. When we submit to God's preparation, we align ourselves with his plan. The lessons we learn during this time not only prepare us for promotion, but also deepen our relationship with him. As we embrace the process, we come to understand that preparation is not a delay, but a necessary step toward the fulfillment of God's promises. Obedience is the key that aligns us with God's will and opens the doors to his favor. Throughout Scripture, we see a consistent pattern. God honors obedience. It is not about perfection, but about a heart that is willing to trust and follow him, even when his instructions don't make sense to us or when the path seems difficult. Obedience is an act of faith that demonstrates our reliance on his wisdom rather than our own understanding. When God called Abraham to leave his homeland and go to a place he didn't know, Abraham obeyed. He didn't have all the details, but he trusted God's promise. Because of his obedience, God blessed him abundantly, making him the father of many nations. This shows us that God's favor often flows in response to our willingness to step out in faith, even when the outcome is uncertain. Similarly, the story of Naaman, the commander of the Syrian army, illustrates how obedience can bring about God's miraculous favor. Naaman was instructed by the prophet Elisha to wash 7 times in the Jordan River to be healed of leprosy. Initially, he resisted because the instruction seemed too simple, even beneath him. But when he finally obeyed, he received his healing. This teaches us that sometimes God's instructions may not align with our logic, but obedience unlocks the favor we are seeking. Obedience is not always easy, especially when it requires sacrifice. Jesus himself demonstrated this in the ultimate way when he obeyed the Father's will, even unto death on the cross. His obedience brought salvation and reconciliation to all of humanity. Through his example, we see that obedience is not just about receiving blessings for ourselves, but also about being a vessel through which God's purposes can flow to others. In our daily lives, obedience may come in the form of small, seemingly insignificant actions, choosing integrity over shortcuts, extending kindness when it's inconvenient, or stepping out in faith when God places a dream in our hearts. These acts of obedience, though they may go unnoticed by others, are seen and honored by God. His favor often manifests in ways we cannot predict opening doors, creating opportunities, and providing breakthroughs that are far beyond what we could accomplish on our own. Ultimately, obedience is a reflection of our trust in God. It declares that we believe His plans are good and His promises are true. When we obey, we position ourselves to experience the fullness of His favor, not because we have earned it, but because we have aligned our lives with His purpose and submitted to His will. Pruning is a process of removing what is unnecessary, harmful, or unproductive so that growth can occur. In the hands of God, it is an act of love and intentionality. While pruning can feel uncomfortable or even painful, it is a vital part of preparing us for the fullness of His purpose in our lives. God does not prune to punish, He prunes to promote growth, strengthen us, and ensure we bear the kind of fruit that glorifies Him. The Bible uses the analogy of a vine and its branches to illustrate this concept. In John 15, Jesus says that every branch in Him that bears fruit is pruned, so it may bear more fruit. This teaches us that pruning is not a sign of failure or rejection, but of potential. God sees what we can become, and He removes anything in our lives that might hinder us from reaching that potential. It might be a relationship, a habit, a mindset, or even an opportunity that seems good, but is not aligned with His ultimate purpose for us. During the pruning process, it's common to feel a sense of loss or confusion, wondering why certain things are being taken away. But just as a gardener removes dead or overgrown branches to allow light and air to reach the healthiest parts of the plant, God removes what no longer serves His plan for us. What may feel like loss is often a step toward greater clarity and focus on what truly matters. Pruning also teaches us dependence on God. When we go through seasons of change and loss, we are reminded that our identity and purpose are not tied to the things or people around us, but to the One who created us. It is an opportunity to grow deeper in faith, trusting that God's plans are always for our good, even when we don't fully understand them. Sometimes what God removes may be things we've grown comfortable with or even attached to, but He knows that those things are not capable of sustaining the weight of the blessings He is preparing us for. Pruning is a preparation for elevation. It creates room for new growth, fresh opportunities, and deeper connections with Him. Without it, we might remain stagnant or limited, unable to reach the fullness of what He has destined for us. Though the process may not feel pleasant, the results are always worth it. Pruning refines us, strengthens our character, and positions us for greater fruitfulness. It is a sign that God is actively involved in our lives, shaping us to reflect His glory and fulfill the purpose for which we were created. When we embrace this process, we allow God to do His perfect work in us, trusting that what He takes away will be replaced with something far greater. Trials are often seen as obstacles, but in the hands of God, they become tools for strengthening and growth. They are not meant to break us, but to build us, shaping our character, deepening our faith, and preparing us for the assignments ahead. God uses trials to refine us, much like gold is refined in fire. The process may be intense, but it is through this refinement that we emerge stronger, purer, and more resilient. Throughout Scripture, we see that trials are not an indication of God's absence, but of His active work in our lives. Consider Job, who faced immense suffering yet held on to his faith. In the end, Job's trust in God was vindicated, and he was blessed beyond measure. His trials not only tested his faith, but also strengthened his reliance on God, demonstrating that trials often precede greater blessings and deeper revelations of God's purpose. Trials teach us perseverance. They force us to dig deep and hold on to God's promises, even when the circumstances seem bleak. James 1:4 reminds us to consider it pure joy when we face trials, because they produce perseverance, and perseverance leads to maturity and completeness. It is in the midst of challenges that we learn to trust God in ways we never would during times of ease. Trials strip away our self-reliance and remind us of our dependence on Him. God also uses trials to prepare us for what is ahead. David faced lions and bears as shepherd before confronting Goliath as a warrior. Each trial was a step in his preparation, strengthening his courage and faith. In our lives, the challenges we face today may be equipping us with the wisdom, strength, and faith we need for future battles. What feels like a setback is often God setting us up for something greater. Trials have a way of revealing what is truly in our hearts. They expose areas where we may lack faith, patience, or humility, giving us the opportunity to grow. They also draw us closer to God. In our moments of weakness, His strength is made perfect. It is often during trials that we experience His presence most tangibly, discovering that He is indeed a refuge and a source of peace in the storm. Finally, trials have a purpose beyond ourselves. The lessons we learn and the strength we gain through our struggles can become a testimony and encouragement for others. When we endure trials with faith, we become living examples of God's grace and power, showing others that it is possible to overcome through Him. While trials are not easy, they are necessary for our growth. They remind us that God is not just interested in what we accomplish, but in who we become. Through trials, He shapes us into vessels that can carry the weight of His purpose and reflect His glory. Trusting Him in the midst of difficulty allows us to emerge stronger, wiser, and more equipped for the blessings and responsibilities He has prepared for us.